Let me start with Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. Just finished his show, kind enough to join us, and Mike has some hot takes. But let me start with this. Do you like the Kansas City Chiefs, or do you love the Kansas City Chiefs?
I love the Kansas City Chiefs during the regular season. I don't know what to make of the Kansas City Chiefs come the playoffs, right? Because we had that narrative with the Bengals, they can't win in the postseason. I mean, the Chiefs have that same tendency. They struggle to win it. How do they ever lose at home? Look at that scene last night. How do they ever lose a game there? And they consistently find ways to lose in the postseason. So it's going to be even more pressure on them the higher they finish in the playoff tree. If they're the 1 seed or the 2 seed, we're going to be hearing plenty about how the Chiefs can't get it done at home and who's going to go in there and possibly knock them off. And it's amazing that they have struggles. And this year they probably have their best team on paper that they've had maybe since they won the Super Bowl. And not a lot of weaknesses. I like what they can do, but I need to see them prove it when the games count, and that's not going to be until January.
All right, you had a couple of hot takes on Pro Football Talk. Let me start with the hottest one, and that is, depending on how long Marcus Mariota is out, Derek Carr, we know, is out for a couple of weeks with a fracture in his back. You thought maybe bringing in Colin Kaepernick, certainly for Tennessee, makes sense. Why?
Well, Dan, one of the narratives that was out there back when we were in this mode where people were actually trying to sell the idea that it was only football reasons that Colin Kaepernick didn't have a job before Steve Bisciotti, the Ravens owner, pretty made it clear to everyone that it's not just football reasons. One of the arguments was Colin Kaepernick's style is dramatically different from the starter, so he can't be the backup because you need a backup who's just like the starter. And meanwhile, in Tennessee, you got Matt Castle backing up Marcus Mariota. Are you kidding me? He should have been there all along. Kaepernick should have been there all along. And he's the guy that if Mariota misses some time, and even if he doesn't miss time now with this hamstring injury, he has the kind of playing style that is conducive to other injuries. He had the broken leg last December, and it would have made sense for the Titans to have a backup. If there's anything to this notion that you want to have a backup who can simulate what your starter does, so there's minimum drop-off, minimum change if the guy gets injured, then it should have been Kaepernick all along instead of Matt Cass.
But you know that President Trump is going to send out a tweet if you do that. You know right away. He's already done that with Colin Kaepernick. And this is a state that voted, I think, over 60% for Donald Trump. I just can't see them employing him, even though they need a better backup quarterback, Mike.
After everything that's happened over the last 11 days, though, with this, I don't see – how does it get worse at this point, right? I mean, it's already Trump versus the NFL, and that's subsided for obvious reasons in the past couple of days, but at some point it's going to come back again. But you have to ask yourself, well, what are we in the business of doing here? I mean, yes, you want to have your fans show up and you want them to support your team, but you ultimately want to win games. And that's the way to secure long-term support, national following, win football games. And the Titans are kind of on the cusp of that. But if they don't have an adequate backup to Mariota, and whether it's now or whether it's week 10 and he misses time and they lose just enough games that they don't make it to the playoffs, you've blown your opportunity to make your team into one of those teams that people want to follow. And I just think for that reason, you need to have a backup that you feel good about. And I don't know. There was a sense immediately in the aftermath of what the president said that this means somebody is going to go out and sign Colin Kaepernick, and there's been no interest in him in the 10 days since then. But I just think that when you look at the Titans, you look at Mariota, if he can't play, Kaepernick makes so much more sense than Matt Castle. And if you're making a football decision, that would seem to be the right decision.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, joining us. Yeah, but my issue, I think if you ask, it'd be an interesting result, interesting poll question. If you ask fans in Tennessee, would you rather bring in Kaepernick knowing he'll make your team better, or would you rather stay status quo? I'm curious if, even though Kaepernick might be a better backup quarterback or even filling in for a couple of games, if they would still rather stay status quo.
Yeah, and if that's the only question asked and you're not lumping in all the other issues and all the other questions, then you're probably going to have people say we don't want anything to do with Colin Kaepernick, just because that's a way to express yourself in this ongoing debate. But it broadened so much when the president said what he said and more players decided to protest. That at one hand, you look at it and it underscores Colin Kaepernick's role as starting this. But I think it also dilutes his role in what has become a much bigger movement, a much bigger issue than him. And I mean, who knows? But the point is, you want to win games. Matt Castle versus Colin Kaepernick. Hell, Dan, E.J. Manuel versus Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
I think we all know the answer to that one, too.
Adrian Peterson, if you were the Vikings, you would call to see if maybe you could get Adrian Peterson back due to the injury to Dalvin Cook?
Yeah, I know there's a history there, and there's some hard feelings given the way it all ended, but they were going to pay him $18 million for this year. If they had him under contract for $3 million for this year, I think he'd still be in Minnesota. So if they could get him under contract for $3 million, and if he'd happily do it, if he would accept the fact he's not going to get 25 carries a game, if he'd be happy with 15 to 20, which would be a heck of a lot more than what he's gotten in New Orleans so far. He's got 27 in 4 games. He had 16 games, a full season in 10 years with Minnesota, where he had 27 or more carries in a single game. So I'd like to think that people can be mature and be adults and let bygones be bygones and set everything aside and understand he knows the personnel, he knows the coaches, he's got a comfort level there that he wouldn't have anywhere else. He could hit the ground running for the Vikings, and without Dalvin Cook, they need something, and Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon aren't what they need. And it's one of those things where it makes too much sense, and it involves too much ego setting aside to ever happen.
My LA Rams, are they the best team in the division?
Right now they are. Now, whether or not they can hold that remains to be seen. One of the things about Pete Carroll, and I think this is what sets Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick apart from their peers, they know how to make a team better on the fly. And whatever flaws a team has in September, they're going to get ironed out by November and December, and the team is going to be better. And that makes them, relative to their competition, in position to rise up. And we're going to find out this weekend. Great game this weekend. Seattle and the Rams get together. We'll see what Pete Carroll can do, because the Rams have had good luck against the Seahawks in recent years in comparison to what the Seahawks have done to other teams. But I think the Rams still have to worry about the Seahawks. They don't have to worry about the Cardinals or the 49ers. And if Seattle gets better on the fly, that could be the team that ultimately knocks the Rams off the top spot in that division.
The Patriots defense, you talked about Belichick adapting, almost quarter to quarter in game, but this is a bad secondary. Who would have thought? You would have thought the secondary would be the strength of the Patriots, and the issue would be that can they stop the run or can they put pressure on the quarterback? How do you fix this in New England?
Well, I think you have to keep it simple. That's something Rodney Harrison and Tony Dungy both said on Sunday. And this is an example, Dan, of where Bill Belichick, the personnel evaluator, makes it harder on Bill Belichick, the head coach, because they knew Stephon Gilmore. They played against Stephon Gilmore twice a year for 5 years. And I thought, hey, this is genius. They're paying this guy market value. Early days of free agency, something the Patriots rarely do unless they really love a guy. So they must know that this guy's going to be great and it's going to work, and this is the thing that's going to make them be 19-0, and it hasn't worked yet. And now Bill Belichick, the head coach, is cursing Bill Belichick, the personnel evaluator. Why the hell just pay all the money to this guy? And now I got to fix your mess, Bill Belichick, the personnel evaluator. So, look, if you took the worst defense in the NFL, whoever it is, any given day, and you say, give me one coach who I can count on to fix this over the balance of the season, the coach you're going to take is Bill Belichick. So he gets a chance to do it with his own defense. And how could, we saw what happened 3 years ago when we wrote them off, when they got blown out by the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. And I don't think anybody's writing them off because they know Bill Belichick's going to find a way to make this team better.
Thank you, Mike. Great stuff. We appreciate your time.
All right, Dan. See you, buddy.
That's Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.